Wally, also known as Walraven Van Hall, was a banker in Amsterdam. Wally had 3 kids. Wally was conversing about his new boss, Rost, while attending a party at his coworker's home that morning. The following day, Wally and the other bankers finished it with Rost's speech, which they felt was pro-Nazi because he had forgotten what the Nazis had done to their nation. The following day, Wally questioned where one of his coworkers was. Then he went to his friend's home. He was shocked when he saw his friend and the entire family were murdered terribly. The Nazis put an end to them. When Wally was about to leave the house, a man by the name of Vandenberg came up to him and quickly challenged him to a fight. Wally invited him to his home so that they would not be noticed discussing. Berg said that he had served in the Marines in the past. He had been researching Wally. He tells that Wally's subsequent mission was to raise money from investors since Berg intended to establish a new bank to finance his opposition effort. Even though it was difficult, Wally's wife agreed with her husband's choice after hearing the story. Wally visited his older brother Jidge Van Hall, a financier, after making up his mind. He instantly opposed it when he learned of the intention to establish a resistance bank, though. Wally then discussed the plan with his brother, stating that he would gather investor funds using blank stock documents from the historic Dutch Empire so that later, everyone who wanted to become an investor would receive shares worth 1,000 guilders. Wally did this so that the Nazis would not suspect anything. Each shareholder would be listed using a special code so that the Nazis would not know who was funding this resistance movement. The shares were evidence of a transaction involving assisting war funds. Jidge was astounded by the great ideas and speechless. Shamefully, he still lacked the courage to participate. Wally left after that in disappointment. Later, Jidge realized Wally had finally begun executing his strategy. Then he sped out to find his brother. Jidge was shocked to find Wally tying money in someone's body when they first met. Wally clarified that this was how he provided money to fighting organizations to prevent misunderstandings. Wally requested Jidge's assistance in enlisting the aid of additional financiers. Jidge could complete the task more quickly in his existing position. Jidge was persuaded to enlist after all so that he could make sure his brother was safe. 2 weeks later, Wally and Jidge were able to raise a significant amount of money, sending a total of 600 guilders to the rebel organization. Jidge's wife questioned him, what if they were caught one day? Wally replied that it was impossible to get caught because he was much more clever than the Nazis. The Nazi commander, though, was observed meeting with Rost at the rebel headquarters. When the rebels were captured, the commander claimed to have discovered a large amount of cash and ammunition. The commander had no idea about how the rebels were able to pay for that, given that the Nazis constantly controlled the country's currency movement. Rost asserted that rather than concentrating on rounding up the rebels one at a time, the Nazis would be better served to concentrate on discovering the individual responsible for the rebels' financing by the illegal bank. After hearing Rost, the commander agreed. Wally and the other participants met the following day to go over the development of their resistance bank. Jidge questioned Wally what the bank would become when the conflict was over and the government refused to pay back the loans and investments. Wally firmly said that the Dutch government had sent a letter concealed within a shirt button. In the letter, the government permitted Wally to borrow up to 30 million guilders to support the armed group. After the war was over, the government vowed to pay back all the loan money. Jidge was delighted to see the letter but yet perplexed. When their family arrived at the front of the home, Wally invited Jidge to join them. After a short while, a structure near Wally's home exploded. Wally's wife said that the soldiers intentionally destroyed the building because the Nazis kept information there regarding the names of Dutch people who were scheduled to be executed, which made Wally happy. After learning the tale, Jidge felt pleased. He had no idea that the funds he gathered would help save lives. One day, one of the fighters was captured by the Nazis. The Nazi officer inquired about the movement's leader while the man was still being tortured in prison. The fighter initially refused to speak, but after more torture, he was made to reveal the name of the leader, which turned out to be Wally's alias Van Tile. Wally's train stopped abruptly in the middle of the road. It came out that a Nazi transport train was traveling next to the train. Everyone, including Wally, was upset upon hearing the screams of the inmates. After arriving home, he was exhausted that the expedition would finish soon. Wally's resistance movement was still going strong 2 years later. That afternoon, as Wally was just entering the office, he ran into Rost, who informed him those 2 years prior, the Nazis had detained a rebel member commanded by a banker by the name of Van Tile. Rost instructed him to contact him. Wally tried to remain calm after hearing that. A woman named Jeanette was seen delivering newspapers on her bicycle in the city's streets. She was a member of the resistance movement that formerly worked to disseminate information about the Nazis and inspire people to resist them. Sadly, she encountered some Nazi police who were on patrol that day. Despite her attempts to flee, she was still found. The following day, Wally and Berg met the owner of the Nazi army's weapons train and attempted to bribe him for stopping the train. But the owner rejected their offer because the price Wally offered was significantly less than what he had been paid by the Nazis. The railroad's owner ultimately agreed to stop the train if Wally agreed to pay 6 million guilders per month. He got the idea that they can generate fake bonds and then trade them in for genuine documents at their place of employment, a bank. Jidge felt compelled to say yes after. The following day, Jeanette's boyfriend visited the police department. The police inquire as to whether Jeanette's boyfriend was also a rebel. In response, Jeanette's boyfriend said he did not know anything but that he would do whatever it took to get Jeanette released from custody. The police chief took advantage of him, making the fictitious bonds. Willie went to a criminal ink dealer, but just as he was ready to enter, a barber dragged Wally into his barber shop. The barber began shaving him without saying anything. Wally initially did not understand what had just happened, but he soon came to cope with it. He observed the Nazi police arresting and killing the unlicensed ink vendor through the windows. Wally was surprised since he would have also been shot if he had entered the building. Wally thanked the barber for saving his life before he left. He was worried that he would get caught one day. He would certainly be put to death, as would his entire family. Finally, Wally decided to leave the house that very evening. Wally lived in an abandoned building close to the printing press to avoid being discovered. A member came and reported that Berg had been captured by the Nazis while Wally and the other members were printing false bonds a few days after acquiring the ink. When Wally learned that their confidential knowledge had been revealed, he felt odd. A nun visited Berg the following day in prison to deliver meals. Nun claimed he could use her to communicate with someone and promised not to tell anyone, but Berg just nodded his head since he knew she was lying. Berg and several other inmates were taken by the Nazis up the hill to be executed that afternoon. On the other hand, Wally cried out inconsolably when he learned of Berg's execution. He did not anticipate Berg to be put to death so swiftly. Jidge, who had also heard the news, urged Wally to halt what he was doing before they too were discovered, but Wally refused. Jidge got frustrated and left. An insurgent met Jeanette in the meantime. He came to tell her that the group would meet in 3 days, and he requested Jeanette to assist them select a secure location. So, Jeanette told her boyfriend about the earlier scheduled encounter. The meeting might be held in his office, according to Jeanette's boyfriend's suggestion. Without realizing that her boyfriend had abandoned her and the group, Jeanette agreed to the plan right away. 3 days later, when several of the insurgents went to see how Jeanette's boyfriend's office was doing, he locked them inside. There, the Nazis put to death the rebels. Wally told Jidge about the unexpected case from the meeting. He was certain that a traitor had disclosed his plan. Wally then instructed Jidge to prepare for the exchange of the fake bonds because Rost would leave town the following day for work. They both run into the banker overseeing the bonds they had attracted to the group the following morning at the cafe across from the bank. As Wally and Jidge waited at the cafe for the banker to deliver a bag containing bogus bonds to the bank to swap them, Rost, who was supposed to be out of town on duty, suddenly appeared. Jidge hurriedly entered to meet Rost to buy time. The strategy worked. Wally asked Jidge to join him for drinks in a nearby warehouse to toast their accomplishment. Wally chuckled as he remarked that with this much money, they could accomplish more. Wally was confident that their fight would soon be won and the Netherlands would be liberated from the Nazis. After being apart from his family for a month, Wally finally returned home. Wally's wife asked him to stop when they first got married, but he was unable to do so because so many people relied on him. He had to complete his previous task because he was a fighter. When his wife heard his remarks, she was only able to contain her anguish. In contrast, several fighters were closely pursuing Jeanette's lover. They believed Jeanette's boyfriend deceived them. Their suspicions turned out to be correct. They overheard Jeanette's boyfriend talking to the Nazi police at the church. Finally, they got into a shootout. The Nazis captured one combatant, and the police chief questioned him the very following day. If he refused to speak, the police chief threatened to execute 30 further rebels. The individual was compelled to reveal where the next meeting would take place. According to the fighter who was caught, the Nazis surrounded the meeting place 3 days later. Hence, Wally was discovered. Jidge told Wally's wife that his younger brother had been arrested. Jidge instantly collected Wally's wife and kids so they could escape to the village before the Nazis arrived. In the meantime, Wally revealed to a prisoner that if he were to be put to death later, he wanted the prisoner to tell his wife how much he loved her. The Nazis arrived and took Wally away the next day as he was pondering. In the end, Van Tuyl, Wally's ruse, had been discovered. The rebellion's chief planner was Wally. He suffered torture. Soon after, Rost arrived and questioned how Wally could manage a business of this magnitude and amass such wealth. Instead of responding, Wally advised Rost to change what he was doing right now because the Netherlands will soon gain independence. He simply remained silent after hearing Wally's comments and departed the area. Wally and other convicts were transported to the riverfront to be put to death. Wally's wife was sobbing when she learned of her husband's passing. The following day, Jeanette was observed kidnapping her boyfriend. The survivors shot Jeanette's lover inside the tunnel and killed him. After a long battle lasting 4 months, the forces finally succeeded in retaking the Netherlands from the Nazis. Rost was detained and held in Canada, but after a single day, he decided to commit suicide. The administration that had fled to England returned to the Netherlands when the country gained its independence. The tale of Wally's struggle was being discussed by Jidge and the government that afternoon during a meeting. One of them questioned why Wally borrowed more than allowed and even committed the crime of stealing bank funds totaling 100 million guilders. Jidge got tired of them talking about money all the time. Wally was the one who always fought to free the country while the administration fled to England and allowed its citizens to be colonized. One of the nations asked Gij to conceal the circumstances surrounding Wally's struggle after the conference. Even if Wally had a valid motive for it, if other countries learned about the criminal case, it would reflect poorly on their newly independent nation. Gij walked out of the building silently. When Gij observed the faces of others who suddenly appeared happy to be able to live freely, he felt the anger in his heart go. Gij had been disappointed that the details of his brother's battle had to be kept a secret. If his brother saw all of this, he felt certain that he would be delighted as well.